Hey guys, we're back. This time we're going to be taking a look at Nemesis from Awakened Realms. This is basically Alien in a box. And I think there's more Alien theme to this than some of the actual Alien games I've played. And you're on a ship. You wake up from your cryo sleep. The alarms are going off. There's a dead body there. And you got to figure out what's going on, where the ship's headed. Turns out there's aliens on board the ship. You have to fight your way through to make sure that the systems are repaired and that you're headed to the correct location, as well as some other stuff, or at least evacuate an escape pod and destroy the ship so the aliens can't infect anywhere else. But it's a very interesting game, very thematic, and it comes in this monster of a box. Can't really tell on the camera here, but it is massive. Size-wise, it's just pretty much a standard. I think it's a 12 or 13 by 13 box, something like that. But it's just the thickness, and it weighs quite a bit because there's a lot in here. I already did do an unboxing on the channel, so if you want to check that out, it'll be linked at the end of the video here. And for this one, we're just going to go through real quick. I'm going to explain how to play, take a quick look at what's in here, and then I'll tell you my thoughts. So like I said, I already did an unboxing for this, so I'm not going to go through everything in detail here. We're just going to go real quick through. The rulebook's pretty nice. There is a how to play video on here, and I watched several videos, so I actually learned how to play from videos. So I can't say too much about the rulebook, but anytime I need to look something up, it is in there. Though they are in a screwy order at some points. Like the first 2 pages, you have your overview here. You have the background, like flip story of what's going on. Then you have a game setup, which tells you how to set up the board. A crew setup, which tells you how to set up the players. And then they go through a player turn, the different actions you can do, and then movement exploration, and then somewhere it gets to the encounter and combat for aliens. And some of these things can happen in a screwy order. The only real complaint I have about the rules is that this chart here, which you use every turn, at the end of every turn, you draw out of the bag. We'll get to that, but looking up what the reference for the different symbols do when you draw them out of the bag. I guess in the Aftermath expansion, which was a Kickstarter exclusive thing, they have little reference cards, and in some of the other expansions that came later, they have these little reference cards that have that chart on them, but it would have been nice to at least have that chart on the back of the book, if not on a little reference card. Like they obviously figured it out later and they did it, but that one's missing from the main book there. Next thing we have is the board, and I really like that the board gives you this just thematic experience of being on the ship. It's very dark, and I got a weird glare on there. Once you get these little hexes here, you put room tiles there, which you're going to flip over and explore as you go on. Then there's a couple static rooms that are always in play, like the cockpit up here. This is the cryo chambers here. Engine rooms are down on this side off in the glare where you can't see. My only real complaint about the board is that it's too dark. You know, it looks brighter on the camera than it actually is, but these hallways are basically like dark grays in colors on a black background, and it fits with the theme, but it does make it, unless you have really bright lights, that's part of it in here in my recording room. I've got really bright lights in here, but under normal room lighting, some of these hallways are kind of dark and hard to see. Obviously, it doesn't come through on the camera very well, but it does fit in with the theme, though, so it's not entirely an issue. But the tiles and things are so nice, and I just like the artwork and stuff on them. The board is kind of a letdown compared to that, though that's probably my biggest complaint about the game. Everything else is on the positive side, so it's not really a complaint. Then we got 2 of these charts here that show you what each of your rooms are. The basic rooms here, and I think the special rooms are on the back here. And then the components in here, like I said, I did an unboxing. I already went through all this stuff. So there's not a whole lot to show here. You have your player boards. Under this, I did find, it dumped a little bit when I tipped it up. I do have my tokens in these little cases. They're coin cases. These are quarter sized, 30 millimeter, I think. Work perfect for these. Although once you get them, if you leave them normal, they all fit in there. But once you put them in those, they don't all fit. So there's a set amount that has to start the game in the bag. I just leave those in the bag, and it works perfect there. Same with the bases. I just leave those on. I saw somebody put them into one of these. I've also 3D printed some extra components. So I have the send the signal markers and slime markers instead of just using these on the various spots on the board here. So I have some extra components I made for myself. But yeah, pretty decent storage solution too for base game. Everything fits in there nice and neatly. You can even fit a little bit of the extras in there. And then on our next section down, you can see these are all sleeved cards, and they're divided up. These are the character cards. I think these are the solo cards. These are the normal cards you use. These are all the equipment and items, and then these are the weaknesses and the crafted items in here. And then the tile tokens in there. But that's a real quick rundown on everything that's in the box. Because, like I said, I did an unboxing video already. So if you want to see more in-depth or close-ups on things, definitely check that one out. But I would get this set up real quick to give you an example of quickly how to play. And then we'll jump to give you my thoughts. So I know this is a terrible angle, but I just wanted to get everything into the picture here. This is what it looks like for setup for a two-player game. So you can see here, the game is quite a table hog once it's all set up. These cards over here are actually not going to be used, but so we have our player board here for the pilot, the first player token, and then this has a list of our actions we can take, basic actions here, as well as our action deck, which we'll be drawing cards from. We have markers here for if we send the signal or get slimed, and then this is our damage track down to where we start taking severe wounds, or serious wounds. We have our weapon here, which starts with 2 ammo. Sorry for the glare, they're sleeved. And then every character has 2 of these quests. In this case, we can activate it in the fire control system room. Flip this over, and we get a evacuation key. Each character has 2 of those plus a starting weapon. And then you're going to have a player turn order card, which gives you the lay of how the turn goes. And then you flip it over to signify when you're done for the round and pass. Then you have this player board here, which I just noticed were backwards, that you're going to be putting equipment cards as you pick them up. They seat in here, so you can keep them up there where you can see them. This one's backward too. And then over here we have our scout, which is going to be player 2. And everything's pretty much the same on there. We have our weapon and our ammo, our 2 quest cards. And then we have these objectives. Now I just have this set up for a co-op. There's a list of these, a deck of these for co-op, which are more friendly. In the case of co-op, you have to achieve all the objectives, and you're going to get one of these per player or character. So here we got, this one is to, I don't know if you can see, there we go. At least 2 intruder weaknesses must be discovered. There's a way to find those we'll get to in a minute. And then this one is to send the signal and kill the queen, or send the signal and destroy the ship. The queen's on board the ship, so she's going to die with it. There's also a bunch of optional things you can have. There's a deck of cards. If someone is early eliminated, they can actually take control of the aliens and play as them. Speeds up the game, stops downtime. basically, is what it's for. It's an interesting mechanic. Haven't actually used this yet, so I can't comment on it too much. There is a way to revive a dead player, so you don't really need those, but it's there as an option, which is kind of cool. There's the other solo objective cards, so if you wanted to play solo or co-op. The normal game has the standard objective cards, and I don't know how I can do this with the camera in my hand, but these are split up into corporate, as you can see here, and personal. So your personal here, send the signal and explore all rooms on the ship. I think most of the personal ones are kind of positive. You and at least one other character must survive. But there are ones, I think mostly the corporate ones I want to say, but I think there's some in both decks, that basically incentivize you to screw over other players. Here's a good example. Either player 4's character cannot survive, or your character can be the only survivor. Those are kind of weird together. This is, of course, you can only use in a game with 4 or more players. So there's limitations on those two that are going to get swapped out based on the number of players. But a lot of cool options in there. At the beginning of the game, you're going to get one personal and one corporate. And as soon as the first alien is encountered, you have to choose one or the other that you're going to work on for the rest of the game. And win or lose the game depends on if you survive and then if you complete your objective. So those are kind of neat. And then they also have a list of draft cards, so you can draw from these to pick the various crewmen to decide which character you're going to play. Everybody drafts 2 of these and then takes the one they want out of those 2. So lots of cool options in there. Then up here we have the intruder board, and this is basically telling us about our aliens. It's going to tell us the different types of alien based on their symbols. And then these are weaknesses we can research by, in this case, scanning the character corpse, the intruder egg, or a intruder carcass. And then there's eggs that represent the eggs in the nest. We have our serious wound cards. Event cards, you need a pile and a discard. Intruder attack cards, you need a pile and a discard. And then all of your equipment, which technically needs discard piles, but I didn't really leave enough room there. And then we have our contamination cards and the reader up there at the top. On the ship laid out here, all of our tokens for the rooms are set. They tell you whether to use a number 1 room or a number 2 room. And then you put an exploration token on top, like this one's a number 2 room up here. And then you shuffle and lay out the engine tokens in the correct rooms. One of these engines is functional, one is not. Throughout the course of the game, you can do things that allow you to look at these and basically swap their places. And the one that's on top is the one that matters. And then I think that's about everything. Oh, I missed one thing. Over here in the bridge, we set our course to B. And there's a random coordinate card here. There's a bunch of these, so it can change up the variety. But right now we're going to B. Where B is, we don't know until somebody goes here and checks or uses an ability that allows you to check. And then the only other thing here is we have the room where we're starting with our 2 characters on here, and a dead body token starts there. Oh, and the escape pods. In a 2-player game, you have 2 escape pods. They start locked. You can unlock them later on. And they, one's over there, one's over here, and then the rooms to actually use them are somewhere on the ship. There is a flip side of the board that's a little bit more difficult. The hallways change up, the way the rooms connect together change up. I believe the escape pod rooms are always right next to the escape pods. However, there's also 2 technical quarters. In this, there's only the one over here. And that's like a Jeffries tube, service conduit. And any of these rooms that have a dot like this can attach to that section over there, and then attach back onto another, like here's another one over here. So they would be connected through that tube. This is the easier side of the board just because I'm more familiar with it, and I figured I would make less mistakes. I'm sure I'm still going to make some, but you guys can call me out on that. So this back setup, at least you can see here, I can't really get everything on the table, but enough to get the gist of it. So we're going to start with our player one, which is the pilot here. We take their deck and we're going to draw 5 cards. It's the first step that you do on the player phase. All the players are going to be doing this, but we're going to look at our 5 cards here. We have knowledge of the ship, which allows us to open and close doors. We can look at an unexplored room tile, turn it face down without looking at the exploration tile. So we could look at one of these to see what it is, if there's a specific room we were looking for. Old Friend allows us to, in a room without a computer, we can use the room action without paying its cost. That's kind of nice. Piloting, if you're in the cockpit room or room with a computer, you can use its room action without paying its cost. If you're in a room with a computer, you can use it to check that coordinates card up there and see where we're headed. We got a search. This is generic to all the characters. And search is going to allow you to look in the various rooms to see what is there based on the type of room. You're going to draw some of the item cards over there. Draw 2, keep 1. And then computer skills. Did we already have one of those? Oh, these are all different. This allows us to open a closed door, or open or close the door. And if we're in a room with a computer, use it. So a lot of the same basic things for her. I think it's a her. I'm not sure. But so that's what we got in our opening hand. We have our objectives down here that we need to accomplish. So the first thing we're going to need to do is get out and start exploring. We can pick what direction we want to go. It doesn't really matter at this point. I think because she gets the bonus for being in the cockpit, we're going to head her up that way. So we're going to follow, you got to follow the hallways here that go off of each of the rooms. So we're going to follow this one around to this room here. Oops. We flip our room over. We found the shower room. So this room has all 3 types of items can be found in it. And the shower room action also allows us to get rid of slime if we get slimed. And then it just so happens conveniently, and I didn't do this on purpose either, but this card here will show us, or the token here will show us that there's going to be 4 items in that room. So we're going to take these little numbers that are around the outside. We're going to find the 4, and we're going to line it up with the arrow on the map here. So we put it there. As you search the room, you're going to rotate this. When it gets down to 0, there's no more items can be found in the room. This other icon on here means that we are slimed. And we're going to take one of these tokens here. I think you can just see it on camera. We're going to put it down here on our player board on this little slime icon right here. And what that does is, well, let's see. We'll do our noise roll in a minute here. We're going to have to roll for noise. Whenever you move, you're going to generate noise. Unless you're moving into a room that has another character in it, or a room that has a intruder in it. So we're going to roll for noise. And we got a 4. So we look around the tunnels around us. We find the one with a 4. And we're going to put a noise token there. If you ever have to put a noise token in a room that already has one, then you're going to draw out of the bag and resolve an encounter. If on our die here, so you have the numbers 1 through 4 on here twice, because there's 4 corridors on every room. And, well, not necessarily. Some have 3, but they're doubled up. Like here you can see there's a 1 and a 2 on this one hallway. But the other options are the X, which means silence. Now, normally when you do that, you don't place any tokens down because you didn't make any noise. Or I like to think of it more as hearing noise than making noise. But because we're slimed, we have to count the silence as this one, which is danger. And danger means that you're basically going to, if there's any intruders in the room next to you, they're going to move into your room. That could be multiple, so if there's one here and one there, they would both move in, and that could be bad for you. Otherwise, in a situation like we have here, you would just put noise in every corridor attached to the room, so it pretty much guarantees that you're going to get an encounter the next turn if you stay there. So that's just something to look at there. But I kind of got ahead of myself there. To move there, we need to discard something. So first we're going to flip through these real quick. And we're going to discard the knowledge of the ship. Because in order to take our basic action here, and dig this up so you can see. Our basic action for movement costs us 1. So I should have done that ahead of time. That's my bad. But catching back up here. So we discarded 1. We made our move. We explored a new room. We rolled for noise. We got slimed. Now we're allowed to take 2 actions per... Now the terminology is weird here. I call these rounds. They call them turns, I think. I consider a round each time a player gets around, to go, and then a turn is when the thing's finished. I think it's worded differently in the book, so you have to pay attention to that on your own. But you get 2 actions, though, and I think our other action is going to be this search here. And we reduce the item counter by 1, draw 2 cards of the same color as the room you're in, pick 1, discard all the others. And we're going to do that. And we're in this room where we can choose anything we want. So I think we're going to choose items here. So we're going to get the 2 cards, look at them. We got duct tape and a toolkit. They both kind of do the same thing, really. I think the duct tape's more useful to us at this point, so we're going to discard this, and we're going to put our duct tape up here. That is our 2 actions, so it moves on to the scout. And the scout hasn't drawn cards yet because I'm slacking. So we're going to draw 5 cards from here. I'm not going to go through all of these. It's worth noting that each of the characters has... They start with 10 cards, I believe. I think there's one exception when one of the special characters comes with Aftermath. But in them, 5 of them are basically the same cards. You've got Search, you've got Rest, Basic Repairs, I think is one. I'm not sure what all of them are, but they all have the same... a few of the same generic cards. And then on top of that, each one of them has special cards that pertain to that specific class or character. And those are what make each character more unique. Just to move real quickly here, though, we're going to discard this rest card because we don't need it yet. And then we're going to move into the room with our pilot here. Because we moved into a room with another character, we don't need to make a noise roll. Then we're going to use our basic repairs card. We're going to discard this for another move action. And we're going to move up to here. Flipping this over, we found a storage room. And this here, so it's going to have 2. So we're going to line up our 2 with that arrow. And then this cog icon here means that this room is malfunctioning. So we can't use the actual action for this room until we get it repaired. But we're going to put that with the 2 facing the arrow, us in it, and then we're going to put a malfunctioning marker on that room to remind us that it's malfunctioning. There are 8 malfunction markers in the game. If you ever get to a point where you have to put out a 9th marker, the ship is destroyed, loses structural integrity or whatever, however you want to think about it, but the ship is destroyed. Same goes for the fire markers. Rooms can be lit on fire. If you ever get to a point where you have to place a 9th fire marker, the ship explodes. So, a lot of ways to lose in this game. But that's our 2 actions. We would pass back turn to the pilot. Just to speed things up, because I don't want to go through a whole thing. This is going to be a super long video. You're going to keep doing the same thing with the same hand. So now we only have these 3 cards left in our hand. We can take 2 more actions if we wanted to. The room we're in, I don't think we can do any of these in because there's no computer in there. So at any point, you can basically say, okay, I'm done for the turn. I don't want to do anything else. You get to choose if you want to keep or discard any of these cards. So say there's one that you're probably not going to be able to use. You discard that so that next turn you can draw up to 5 cards again. So now I'll be able to draw 3 cards because I only have 2 in my hand. We're going to set these aside. If you want to designate that you're done, you flip this over to pass. Once you've passed, you cannot come back to you. You don't get another turn for the rest of this round. So I think I used this correctly that time. But so it would go back to the other player until everybody basically runs out of actions or decides to pass because they can't do anything else. Once all the players have passed, you're going to go on to the event phase here. And the first thing you do on the event phase is move the track. This track here keeps track of the hyperdrive. When this gets down to 0, the ship is going to jump, and anybody not in cryo or not on an escape pod is going to die from the G-forces of the ship accelerating. So that moves up by 1 here. And at this point, if the self-destruct timer, which is over here, has been engaged, that's going to start moving down. The next thing is intruder attacks. There's no intruders on the ship right now, so that is not going to be an issue. Oh, and I forgot. I'm skipping around because I'm trying to go fast here. I never rolled noise for the scout, which was a 2. So we got to do that real quick. Should have done that before. Again, trying to hurry here. And then we do fire damage. None of the rooms are on fire currently, so that is not a problem. It is worth noting that the fire damage is kind of an odd thing in this game. If there's a fire in a room where you end your second action of your turn, you take damage. So if you continue to stay in a room, every time you've done a second turn or your second action, you take damage. However, when it gets to the fire damage phase on here, this only applies to aliens. This is the only time that the intruders take damage from fire. So that's a big thing to keep in mind there. The players don't take damage on that. They take damage on their turn. Fire damage on here is for the intruders. Then we resolve an event card, which there should have been more stuff out here in a normal turn. But so we draw one of the event cards. If there's aliens in play of these matching types, they're going to move down corridor 4. Then you go on to this. Consuming fire, set the count them in each room with a fire marker to 0. Place a fire marker in each room neighboring a room with a fire marker. Does not spread through technical corridors or closed doors. So basically, if you had fires on there, they would start spreading. They would eat up items in a room, so you couldn't search them. Thankfully, we don't have any fires right now, so this card doesn't do much. Early on, these aren't going to do much. Later in the game, that could be bad. If you had a couple rooms on fire, suddenly they're all spreading. We get you real close to that 9 fires very quickly. And then the final thing to resolve would be the bag here. They call it bag development. So you're going to reach in here and you're going to draw out a token. In this case, we got an adult. And this is where that chart that I was mentioning that's missing in the rule book, it's in the book, but not on a card or something that you'd need. This is where that would come in handy. Right now, I know what the adults do. It allows every character has to roll for a noise check in the room they're in. It is worth noting in the base rules it tells you to leave this token out, resolve the noise, and then put this back. But then later in a later printing they tell you to put these back after they're done there. So I'm going to put it back just because. So we're going to roll a noise check for the pilot. He got a 4. Couldn't have planned that better because you would put this in the hallway 4. But there's already one in 4, so we're going to take that one away. We're going to resolve an encounter. And we got an adult. So what I like to do with these is I actually put these next to the room because I put the damage tokens for them with those. You don't have to do that, but it's just a way to keep track for me at least. And we're going to get ourselves an adult intruder. And then the first thing that happens on the back side of this token, there's a number. In this case, it's a 3. Our pilot discarded and only has 2 cards left in hand, so that means we're going to get a surprise attack against us. So we're going to draw the top intruder attack card, and you ignore this number at the top. That's for something else, but down here we look. This is an adult, so this is going to trigger a bite. If the character has 2 serious wounds, they die. If not, they're going to suffer a serious wound. That's a pretty nasty one. So on our card down here, you can just see it on camera. We have light wound 2 light wound, and then serious wound. So we technically got 3 wounds out of that. Gives us our serious wound. We're going to flip it over. Our arm is wounded. We only have 1 hand slot for heavy items and objects. If we have 2, we have to drop 1 instantly. We only have our gun right now. Just down here where you can't see, we only have our gun, which is a heavy item. Heavy items are designated by this little bag carrying icon there. So we only have the 1 right now, but that hurts. That's also our first, it's upside down. That's also our first serious wound. If you ever get 3 serious wounds, your character dies. So we can dress this wound with a med kit or the medical bay, flips it over face down, and we still count as having a serious wound, but we no longer suffer the negative effects on here. Then we can use another one, med kit or certain abilities to remove a dressed serious wound. So off to a bad start there. We still got to roll for the scout. And the scout got a silence roll, so nothing happens there. And that would end our bag development phase. There's different things depending on what you draw. If you draw the blank out of here, nothing happens, but you add another adult to the bag. There's a set number of them in here, so they start adding up after time. If you draw the larva icon, it gets removed and you put a creeper in the bag instead. So lots of interesting things there. But that's a quick look at a couple turns. Well, now that I'm actually in combat, maybe we should start another round real quick. Just to show combat. So at the beginning of the player turn, we're going to take our first player marker and it's going to get moved over to the other character. And then our players are going to draw up to 5 cards. And again, a lot more would have gone on this first turn, but I just quickly ran through things. It's also going to be the scout's turn, but we're going to skip that for now just so you can see combat real quick. And I think that's the one I discarded, didn't I? Thought she had a combat card. Actually, no, it was the scout that had a combat card. So everybody has the basic ability to shoot or melee attack. Shooting uses your main weapon here, which in this case we have a shotgun. Every time you deal at least 1 damage, it deals 1 additional. So we're going to try using that just for the heck of it. Not that I think she can actually take this thing by herself. She's not made for combat. So we're going to get rid of our rest card because we have to discard 1 card to do a basic action of shooting. We're going to discard 1 of our ammo to take a shot. And then we're going to roll our combat die. And that is a creeper symbol. So on this die there is a miss. Where is it? There's a miss. There's 2 creeper symbols. Creeper symbol will hit anything smaller than that. So it'll hit a creeper or a larva. Then you have this, which will hit an adult, a creeper, or a larva. Then you have a hit, which is a guaranteed hit no matter what you're fighting, and a critical, which does 2 damage. So unfortunately in this case we missed, so we do nothing. Our second action, we're just going to do real quick again. We're going to discard a card. We're going to use our other shot. Then we're out of ammo because this shotgun sucks. And we got a hit that time. Because of the way the shotgun works, every time you deal at least 1 injury, deal an additional. So we're going to do 2 damage. And like I said, I personally keep track by putting these right on that token. And I move that token with that intruder as they move around the ship. Oh, and it's off the screen, so you couldn't see that. So I put these right on the token. And then as the intruder moves around the ship, I will move that token with them just to keep track. That's my personal way of doing it. That's not actually a rule, but now that we've done damage, though, we are going to draw our top intruder attack card. And now we're going to look at this number up here. Unfortunately, it's a 3. We dealt 2 damage, so it's still alive. And that's pretty much the way combat goes. Skip ahead here to the event phase again. We're going to say we got all the way down to the intruder attack. We're going to draw a card, flip it over, and then we look here. Adult is on there, so the adult's going to scratch us, and the character suffers 1 light wound and gets a contamination card. So in this case, we get one of these that'll go down here on our light wound, and we get a contamination card. And these contamination cards get put into your discard pile when you get them, and then they're shuffled in when they come back around, and you have a chance of drawing these. Once you draw it and it's in your hand, it's basically a dead card in your hand. It can't be used to power another card, which is a bad example because everything in my hand costs 0. But like the basic actions where I have to discard a card in order to move, I can't discard these to fuel another card. They're just dead space. They take up your hand. If you get multiples of them, they'll start eating up your hand, and it sucks. There is a card, which I know I discarded already, called Rest. Every character has one of these. It allows you to scan all the contamination cards in your hand and remove all the uninfected ones, which is a nice way to get them out of your hand. And to do that, if you were to use that action, you would take these and you put them in this little reader. And this is really hard to see on camera. You can just get it just right if you get it at the right angle. There, you can kind of see it. And they put in these false ones that look like it, but looks like none of these say infected. So this, if I was to use that rest card, would have gotten discarded. However, if you get one that actually says infected on it, then your character is going to basically get a facehugger, one of these little larva guys, and they're going to go on your player board here. Bad things happen. As I say, the infected procedure they have on here is how they word it, and that's listed on the back of here for reference. So if one of the contamination cards you just scanned was infected, do the following. If you have a larva on your character board, you die. Put a creeper in the room you were in. If you do not have a larva on your board, you put one there, and that's what we did there. Just as our quick example. So, scenario, you already have one of these here. You get a second one, that'll kill you. You turn into a creeper. Bad things happen from there. Quick look at the gameplay. I didn't go over everything. I went through it real quick, but it gives you the basics of exploration, combat. Every card has an action value that it requires. For some reason, I got the two characters that all have zeros. So in this case, if I wanted to do this basic repair card, you play this card, but it requires you to discard 2 other cards. That's what this means here, in order to do that. The only other option I didn't really show was the careful movement, which is down here. These normal actions, move, shoot, melee, pick up a heavy object, trade, and craft an item, all require 1 discard. Careful movement requires 2. If you wanted to careful move, instead of making the die roll to see where the noise goes, you can careful move into a room, and then you get to pick where that goes. So once you get a bunch of these noise tokens scattered throughout the board, careful moving will help you to make sure that you're not getting constant encounters, as well as moving into a room with another player. That way you don't have to roll the noise, and moving into rooms with the intruders also don't need to roll. So and that's pretty much a quick overlook at everything. The only other thing to cover would be to escape. So say you didn't want to fight. Up here, and I know I did all this far away. I should have zoomed in a little more, but say you wanted to escape without fighting that intruder there, you do an action that requires you to move. However, basically the intruder is going to get a free hit on you, and you're going to draw the top of the attack card. And we're going to see there is a bite, which we've already saw one of those, so that's a pretty nasty card. And if you survive that, then you can make your move. And that's pretty much the basics. There's a few other little odds and ends, doors closing and things like that, but they'll all come up. Everything's pretty much well explained in the rules. And we'll get this cleaned up, and I'll give you my final thoughts. So Nemesis, the strikingly similar but legally distinct Aliens game. Start off with the things I don't like about it or question about it. There aren't many. I really like the game. So the board I talked about, the black on black, dark colors, while it adds to the theme, makes the board itself kind of bland. And then the hallways, especially in a room that's not super well brightly lit up, they can kind of blend together. Definitely not a reason not to get the game, but it would have been nice. I saw some pictures of prototypes of the original board, and I honestly think they look nicer. The hallways were just brighter and more detailed, and the artwork was nicer on them, but it's not a huge issue. I don't know why it bothers me as much as it does, but it would have been nice to see that used a little more. Player elimination can be a big one. The game does have ways to go around that. Once you're on the med bay, players can drag a body to the med bay and try to resurrect them. The downside to that is you're wasting valuable time getting their resources, maybe drawing attention from the intruders. So you got to think about that along the way. The other one is that if players eliminated early on, they also have the deck where they can take over the aliens. And from what I've heard, it's kind of overpowered, but at the same time it's meant to be, because nobody wants to get eliminated early in a rather long game and then just have to sit there. So this gives them an opportunity to do something. There's a chance people might bring you back, or there's a chance you can take over the aliens and just kick everybody's butt, and the game start a new one. So there's both sides to that. I don't really mind player elimination, but I definitely know there's people out there who hate it, and the fact that it can happen in a rather long game can kind of suck to be that first person out. So it's worth noting that that does exist. And this one kind of goes both ways, as a positive and a negative, but there is a ton of randomness in here. So you have the layout of the ship, and the story goes that you're coming out of cryo and you have this like temporary amnesia, which is why you don't remember the layout of the ship. And that's where you get those room tiles that can be swapped around, and it basically randomizes the layout of the ship. And doing so adds replayability because the game is always different. However, it compounds on top of things, so your layout of the rooms is randomized. The layout of the event tokens that take place when you get to those is randomized. The amount of hit points the various monsters have that you're fighting is randomized based on the cards that you draw. The types of attacks they do are random based on the cards they draw. The events that happen during the event phase are random based on the cards you draw. So even combat is randomized with a die roll. So there's a lot of randomness in here, and you can get to the point where a couple bad draws, a couple bad rolls can really ruin things for you. But at the same time, you can have the exact opposite go, where you can get a couple of really good rolls and a couple of lucky card draws, and you're killing it. So it goes both ways, but I do like the fact that because of the randomness, because of the variable objectives, and all the different things that can change up, the game's always different every time you play. It adds a lot of variety to it. One thing that kind of bothers me is on the base game, there are exactly the amount of number 1 tiles that you use on the map. So you're going to be using all those tiles every game. The number 2 tiles, they actually have more in there than there are spots on the board for them. So you don't see those every game. And I think that's even cooler because there's certain rooms that just don't turn up. I understand why they did it with the number 1 rooms, because of the nest being in there and because of the comms room and the escape pod room and things that you need for the various objectives. So they kind of have to be in there, and if there were too many and those rooms didn't show up, it could screw all over people depending on their objectives. So I do think the game is really cool, and overall the things I like about it, the theme. It makes you feel like you're in the Alien movie or exploring this abandoned space Hulk, the Nemesis, and around every turn, when you get to the next room, is it going to be covered in slime, or are you going to get it all over you? Is the room going to be on fire? Is there going to be a giant alien in there trying to eat you? You don't know until you get there. And you have the other survivors on the ship. If you're playing the normal mode, they can't directly attack you, but they might not help you either. A bulkhead door could shut, and you could be trapped in a room with a fire or with an alien, and you're like, "Hey, help! Let me get out of here." And they're like, "Oh, sorry, can't open the door. Oh, what a shame." And yeah, things like that. You're constantly in fear of being backstabbed, and there's a lot of neat aspects to the game. You never know when something's going to jump scare you up. Bigger aliens pop out of nowhere and beat you up, and you just about kill it, and it runs away. It scurries off into the technical corridor and it disappears. Goes back into the bag, gets fully healed, comes back later. I do like the fact that there's a limited number of aliens on the ship, and throughout the course of the game, if you don't do certain things, they keep multiplying and they'll get more and more. There's just a lot of cool components that all work well together. I would say my biggest complaint is not with the game itself, but with the marketing for the game. And this is one of my huge pet peeves within a game, is exclusives that contain game content. And I got into Nemesis late. I found out about it during the lockdown campaign and had to track down some of the earlier stuff. And while some of the things went to retail, there's things like the Aftermath expansion that did not go to retail. And you can find it, thankfully, thanks to the lockdown campaign. Some places are reselling pledges. But after that, trying to find that's going to be slim pickings, and the prices are going to skyrocket. And it's actual game content. It contains more characters that you can play in the base game. It contains each character now has a specific ability to them, and it's a card with a special ability for them, which I think is really cool. Doesn't come in the base game. It's in the Aftermath game. There's a couple other odds and ends too, the turret room and stuff. Those aren't that big of a deal, but those kind of things shouldn't be an exclusive. On the other hand, they have a pack of really cool 3D models for the game. You can get bulkhead doors, you can get escape pods. I'm trying to think of what all came in there. The turrets, I think they came with Aftermath, but things like that. Those are available in a 3D scenery pack at retail. That should have been, its cosmetic upgrades, that should have been your exclusive, and made the game content stuff available at retail. So I think they did that backwards. Hopefully they learned from that. We'll see in the future, but that's a pet peeve of mine in all games. If you're going to make exclusives, that's fine. Draws people into your campaigns. Make them cosmetic upgrades or things that aren't directly related to gameplay. Having gameplay mechanics and content as exclusives really hurts a game, in my opinion, because there's people out there who won't play a game if they can't complete it. And if they find out there's exclusive stuff that costs hundreds of dollars and they can't get it anymore because it's out of print and things like that, yeah, they're just not going to get the game. So that said, I do think Nemesis is worth picking up. The base game, thankfully, has plenty of content in it, and it will keep you going for quite a while. There's a ton of expansions for this, and I'm going to be doing a lot of them on the channel here. I've got at least 2 of the add-on alien races that you get to fight, and I've got Aftermath eventually coming because I tracked one of those down. Lockdown and that stuff will be coming in the future as well, so keep an eye on the channel for more Nemesis stuff. Might even do an in-depth look at each of the characters. So we'll go through their decks and what they're good at, strengths and weaknesses, things like that, because each character is unique in their own way, even more so with those cards from Aftermath. So anyway, my final thoughts on Nemesis is that it is an amazing game if you have the proper mindset going into it. It's not for those who don't like a lot of randomness. It's not for those who don't like player elimination, because it's going to happen eventually. Thankfully, there is a solo mode version in there, there is a co-op version in there, and then there's the semi-cooperative version. So you get a lot of options there too. A lot of variety in the box here. A lot of game for it, and I have to say, I think this has more of an alien theme feel to it than the previous Aliens game that I reviewed on the channel. And I actually liked that game too, and I played it quite a bit. But now that I have this, I don't know if I'm ever going to play the other one again, so I might actually get rid of it. So I'm loving Nemesis, and the fact that they keep expanding it, keep adding on to it. Lockdown is a standalone game. I keep talking about all these expansions, but there are at least 3... I think there's 2 specifically made for Nemesis, the base game here. New alien races, so you could swap out instead of playing against the basic intruders here, which are the alien lookalikes. They have larvae, that facehuggers and all that. There is the carnomorphs, which are kind of like a zombie race that consume biomatter and then evolve. They remind me of Tyranids or the old gene stealers. And then there is the void seeders, which are a psychic race that kind of attack your mind and drive people insane. So those are cool. Add even more variety to an already cool game. Like I said in the beginning there's 2 sides of the board, so you got a easier and a medium side of the ship, as well as the randomness of all the different components that's going to change it up every time you play. It's going to be a different experience. I believe there's 6 characters in the base game, so you can mix and match those as well, which are going to give you even more variety. So a lot going on there, and it's just a really, really cool game, and a not horrible price. It is up there because of all the models. To be fair, this is another game that could have done with a budget version with cardboard standees, and I would have just as happily played it and had as much fun with it. Though I will say the miniatures in here are pretty cool. They're not the highest quality I've ever seen, but they're certainly far from the lowest. They're definitely on the higher end, and I think anybody with some painting skill can make some pretty awesome stuff out of those. They could have also been scaled down. The player models aren't too bad, but the aliens could have been scaled down 10-20%. Made the box a little bit smaller, maybe a little bit cheaper, a little bit lighter, and wouldn't hurt the game at all. The overscale models look really cool on the table. I will give them that, but they didn't need to be that big. Anyway, that is a look at Nemesis from Awakened Realms. I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I do, and let me know in the comments if it's something you'd be interested in, and what you think of it. And maybe I'll hook up with some of you guys on Tabletop Simulator or something, play a game. Look forward to having more Nemesis content on the channel in the future. And again, I said I'm going to probably go through and do a little video on each of the different characters and how they play, what they're good at, what they suck at, as well as the expansions as they roll in. So that's going to wrap it up for our look at Nemesis. As always, thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.